Welcome to another episode of Wealth Beyond Numbers. I'm your host, Dennis Coral, and we continue the conversation with Eric Gros-Dubois from EPGD Law. And today we're going to talk about trends in the industry in the legal world. I mean, Eric, as you know, with technology and we're living in a post-COVID world, things have completely changed. I mean, when you and I went to school, the thought of people working from home was nothing. Was not even a point of discussion. Didn't exist.
Yeah.
The gig economy didn't exist. The AI wasn't around. Google was around.
Nearshoring didn't exist. AI didn't exist. In fact, actually, if you don't mind, let me take a big step backwards. My first legal job was in 1999. I was a file clerk in college at a personal injury medical malpractice defense firm in Dallas, Texas. And they were basically being paid by insurance companies, usually to defend the doctors and hospitals that were getting sued. And my job was file clerk. Let me explain what that job meant. Every case had 7 accordion folders. You know, remember the old accordion folders, the brown ones? And inside of those were those hard folders that had the 2 holes at the top, and you put the piece of metal through it, and you like have to bend the piece of metal, you put the piece of paper with the 2-hole punch, and so all the papers would fold like this. And I had to create tables of contents by hand on WordPerfect for every one of the folders. So every day I would go to the secretaries, and the secretaries would have a stack of papers that was all semi-organized. And then I would take it, I would organize it by case, and then inside of each case, there was a folder for pleadings, a folder for motions, a folder for correspondence, a folder for discovery, a folder for notes. And I was a full-time employee, right? So back in those days, probably making $25,000 a year. And my job was to organize papers. Let me flash forward. I run a paperless office. Yeah. That job doesn't exist in my law firm. In fact, my admin people's, the closest we can come to that is they organize PDFs that we've scanned and make sure they have the right names and put them into the right folders. And I'll even take it a step further. When I started my career, that job in 1999, most of the old men lawyers, because it was mostly old men, didn't know how to type. They didn't know how to type on a computer. And so they would dictate into a microphone. And then there were assistants whose only job, $25,000 a year, 1999 money, was to sit there with headphones on, transcribing the old man's type words into the computer, writing their letters, writing their motions, writing their things. And to put it even more starkly, the ratio of assistants to lawyers in 1999 was 4-to-1.
Wow. So
for every 1 lawyer, there were 4 people walking around carrying their briefcase. Today, my law firm is 1-to-1. And I see it really soon, 3 lawyers to 1 assistant. I see that coming really soon. I see the transition happening. And in fact, you know, I started my firm 12 years ago. And when I started, I was like, all right, we're going to be technology forward. We're going to have everything in the cloud. We're going to be paperless. We're not going to have file cabinets, which is funny. If you go look at real estate, commercial real estate, if you're looking at an old law firm office or medical office, they have so many square footage devoted to file cabinets. File cabinets. We don't have any file cabinets. There's no file cabinets in my office. So that's just the transition from 1999 to 2025. All lawyers know how to type for themselves now. All lawyers know how to use a computer. And the ratio of assistants to lawyers has really changed from 4-to-1 to 1-to-1. And now, I mean, all the trends are, you know, everyone talks about ChatGPT. And by the way, ChatGPT is just it's like the Kleenex of AI. We use Gemini. Gemini is the one that's built into Google products. My entire office is Google. Everything's in the cloud. And then for lawyers, we use either LexisNexis or Westlaw. Each of them have their own AI legal assistant products. So what I'm really seeing is, first of all, you have to assume that all your competitors are using AI for everything. You have to assume that all your associates are using AI for everything. And you have to assume that your clients are all using AI for everything. And that actually has its own risks and problems, because I'll have clients that'll come to me and say, hey, I decided to draft this thing for you so that you don't have to bill me for it. Why don't you just file it with the court? And we had to make a rule. We had to make a rule. Like, I'm so sorry, that's not how we practice law. That's not how we're gonna, that's not like, you don't walk into the doctor's office and say, hey doctor, I found the answer. Can you just give me some drugs? Right? That you just can't do that, right? Now, I remember, this is just thinking of a doctor's story. I got really sick when I was in law school. I got dengue fever. I don't know if anyone out there has ever had dengue fever. It's a cousin of malaria, and it's not fun. It's a mosquito-borne illness, and there's no cure. They literally told me at the doctor's office, we can take your blood now, and then after you get better, you can come back and give us blood again, and then we can tell you if you had dengue fever. I'm like, what's the point of that? In any case, I looked over, and the doctor was literally on WebMD looking up my symptoms. And, that was 2004, early internet. And so anyway, so we assume that everyone's using AI, and I'm not intimidated by it at all. I look at it as a tool, and I really think the future is going to be fewer practitioners being able to service more people. You're still going to need the doctors, you're still going to need the lawyers, you're still going to need the financial advisors. I just think that we, as the professionals, will be able to service more people. So it's a more powerful tool. And I get asked if I'm intimidated by it, and I said, listen, 100 years ago here in South Florida, there were few cars and a lot of horses. Now look around. Not many horses, lots of cars, right? And all those guys that were stuck making horseshoes either had to learn how to do something else, or they were just going to be out of a job.
Become a dinosaur, yes.
Become a dinosaur.
On the business side, from business owners, when there's a merger and acquisition, have you also seen changes there in that aspect?
Sure, and in fact, I can tell a really poignant story that just happened. So one of my best friends owns a law firm, and he brought on a new CEO, and it's interesting. He's paying big money for the CEO. And I asked him, why would you hire the CEO? He goes, well, first of all, I don't like being CEO, so I'm going to hire somebody who's actually trained to be a CEO because he likes being a practitioner. He likes, in his case, going to court. So he brings on the CEO, and then the CEO, his angle is he wants to grow by acquisition, which is very common in a lot of industries where we've seen it happen for a while now in the accounting world. So these, the older guys, they look to wind down, they look to sell their business, and then there's a rough formula. Someone was telling me in accounting world, it's 1 times gross is the valuation on an accounting firm. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not a valuation expert. And so my friend, he acquires a firm, and essentially the math formula is the firm. So every firm, right, has the practitioners, so in our world, the lawyers, and then it has the back office. And so the vision is you buy the lawyers and you eliminate their back office and fold their lawyers into your existing back office. And the rough math is that you can eliminate about $150,000 a year of overhead, right? We don't need to have 2 accounting systems, 2 marketing systems, 2 websites, 2 whatever. We can downsize it to just 1. And he was expressing frustration that they really did a really rough and not smooth transition because, and this is an easy one, they were all PCs and the other guy was all Macs.
Oh, wow.
Or they were all Google and the other guy was all Microsoft 365. And in our world, we use case management software, and the very popular one is Clio. Clio is very common in the legal world. Well, the other guy was using something different. So all of his files, and the other guy had been practicing for over 20 years. So all of his files, and I believe the math was 150 open cases and over 1,000 closed cases, all of those files were on an incompatible software. And they didn't think a lot of this stuff through ahead of time. And quite frankly, my friend was expressing his frustration at the CEO for not having thought of some of these things through.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it, instead of it being a smooth transition, it turned out to be a rough transition. And I did go to business school, and one of the few things I really, really, really remember from business school was there's no such thing as a merger, ever. Because a merger implies that we're going to join 2 things. It's one thing always acquiring another thing. Mm-hmm. And the famous example is Boeing and Lockheed Martin. At the end of the day, there was only going to be 1 leadership team, only 1 management team, only 1 billing software, only 1 IT infrastructure. Like one of them was going to win, the other one's going to lose.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. If you were to advise a business owner on 3 documents that they should have, what would those be? I understand you have to have a contract. I understand you have a probably. So is there such a thing that you?
So if you're really going to be a business owner, you need to be building a team. If you're going to be building a team, you're going to have employees. You need to have good employment docs. Now, it's not just one thing. In our world, we have three. So we have the employment contract, which is the actual agreement, which includes a lot of those restrictive covenants that we've talked about before. The second is the employment handbook, where we lay out a lot of like the how-to, what days do we get holidays? How do you request PTO? What's the maternity leave policy? Like all those things. And then we have a policy and procedures manual, which is a living document that is literally how to do your job, how to run our firm. And a lot of business advisors have told me that is the most valuable document that a company can have, is the how-to. So I think we do a lot of franchise work. If you think about it, you can go open your own restaurant, or you can buy a McDonald's franchise, right? And so you ask yourself, okay, why would I buy a McDonald's franchise? Well, one of the reasons, and there's a couple reasons, but one of them is they're gonna show you how to do it. Mm-hmm. They're gonna hand you the manual, and I think the manual's this thick.
That's right.
And it includes every single little thing of how to run this business. And that's essentially what you're buying when you buy a McDonald's franchise, or to put it in my world, that's what I would be selling if I ever sold my firm. I'm selling the how-to. Obviously, I think every business that has clients, it depends if, we're not selling goods over a counter. All my clients have to sign a client services agreement. We call it an engagement letter. There's a lot of different names for it. And if I can say something just about agreements in general, contracts are not for friends, okay? If we're friends, we don't need a contract, right? If you're doing business with your mother, your family, your sister, your best friend, you don't need a contract. Contracts are for people that aren't friends anymore. And I'll just paint a picture. I start a business relationship with a client. I expect it to go great, right? I want it to go well. If it goes sideways, which usually means they haven't paid my bill, now we're not friends anymore. Now I'm pulling out that contract, and now I got to make sure that it has teeth. And I'll tell you a true story. So I was originally a subtenant in another law firm. So my landlord was another law firm, and they were the tenant of a landlord. So landlord rented the space to law firm sub-rented the space to me, okay? I was actually the second generation person in that space. And everybody who'd ever been in that space was a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. And so we, being lawyers, were like, hey, let's sign a sublease. Okay. And then I took that sublease, and then later on I moved into my own office, and then I had subtenants, including one of our friends, Phil Stevenson. I had him sign my sublease. And so over the generations, this agreement just kept getting watered down and watered down and watered down because it was just among friends. Well, my subtenant, not Phil, somebody else, and I had a big fight. We ended up getting into it, and it was contentious to the point where I was looking to kick them out. And so I pull out this document, which I hadn't looked at in years, and I hadn't thought about it in years, because that's just it. It's like, the good example is a prenuptial agreement. Yes, it's a great idea. You sign a prenuptial agreement before you get married, but hopefully it's happily ever after, and you're not staying up late at night reading your prenup, right? Because you're in love, right? Now, if you're staying up late at night reading your prenup, that probably means we're in troubled waters, in which case we want to make sure that the agreement is actually got some teeth. So here I am, I'm staying up late at night, I'm looking over this sublease, and I was so disappointed in myself. It had no teeth. It was not designed to be enforceable as a mean contract against somebody who's violating their word. And so I learned the most important lesson. Don't bother even having an agreement unless you plan on it someday being enforceable in court with teeth, right? We can be the best of friends in the world, but I got to tell you something, we're signing a serious agreement. Now, we can put that agreement in the drawer and live happily ever after. But the second you break your word, or the second that we're in a fight, I'm going to pull that agreement out. I'm going to hopefully be like, okay. And so I use that example for everything. You hire someone, best intentions. You bring on a new client, best intentions. You bring on a new partner, best intentions. You sign a new lease, best intentions. But at the end of the day, if everything goes sideways and you pull out that agreement and go talk to a lawyer like me, let's make sure that it has teeth.
That makes a lot of sense. So Eric, if I was a business owner growing my business, I started from scratch. Now I have these contracts. Now I have these sets and procedures in place. Would you and now I'm hiring employees. Would you recommend that their employees sign these agreements as well as part of their onboarding? Would you say that that's something that
unsigned agreement is worthless?
Okay.
So, for example, This happens to me all the time. A client comes to me and they said, Eric, I'm in a big fight. This person owes me a bunch of money. They were my customer. I provided my services. They decided not to pay me. But you know what? We decided not to make them sign the agreement. And I'm like, okay, well then why did you even have an agreement? So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll say, listen, litigation's really, really expensive. So you're better off not starting litigation, maybe taking one on the chin, learning your lesson and making sure that you revise your internal policies and procedures and make sure that your sales team or whoever's on the front line is never onboarding a client without a signed agreement on file. And making sure that agreement, we can make the most beautiful agreement, but if you're not making them sign it, it's not enforceable. It's like
a trust that's not signed.
It's like anything that's not signed. So if it's not signed, and by the way, you touched on a sore spot. I've seen it happen so many times where, especially the business owner, they'll have built this big empire, they'll have acquired all these assets, they'll even go to the estate planning lawyer, and they'll just never get around to signing the will and the trust. And it's like it never happened.
Yeah. With that, I want to end our episode because the next episode, I want to talk about uncovering some myths about your industry and about business owners and what they think about their business from the legal side. So
I love it.
Thank you so much for watching. This was a great episode with Eric. We continue to be with him in the next episode, and where we're going to uncover myths about business ownership from the legal perspective. I'm your host, Dennis Corral, and as we like to say at Corral Wealth Management, retirement and financial confidence starts here. Thank you.